also redirect the question because probably they cannot hear it from the bottom of the room. So enjoy. Okay, Simina, it's the presentation is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for coming. It is a pleasure to meet you guys. So again, my name is Cislariu, and I am in charge of sales here at Trilio for the EMEA region. And we have my colleague Rother. He is our solution architect for EMEA. So he's my partner in crime. What I wanted to go over with you is a quick presentation of Trilio. So to show you who we are and what we do at a high level. And then I will let Robert take over to give you the architecture and the demo of the product. And after the architecture, after he's done with the architecture slides, we will stop for a quick question round, okay? And then go into the demo, and after the demo, we can address the other questions that you might have. Cool. Let me share my screen. Hold on. Perfect. Let me know when you can see my screen, okay?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Perfect. So to the topic of who we are, it's basically simple. Trilio is the only native OpenStack solution that provides tenant-level data protection and recovery. And we have 3 use cases, as you can see. The first one is backup. So what that means is that we not only protect your data, but we also protect the entire workload. And the second scenario is the recover. And what that means is that we allow you to recover your entire workload into the same cloud or into a net new cloud. And then the third one is manage. So the admin will create all the policies and do all the reporting. And the tenant can deploy those policies in their workflow. Okay. Now, as you probably already know, legacy processes are not sufficient, right? That they're not only for the backup needs, but for the recovery needs as well. And it's manual work with scripting, cron jobs, and so on and so forth. And because these legacy tools are not designed to meet the OpenStack demands, we are starting to see that SLAs are not being met, or the complexity when it comes to management. It can get expensive on the infrastructure side. It is sometimes risky, right? And what we're starting to see is delayed OpenStack deployment and application delays, right? Now, if we talk about Trilio and our capabilities, right, and how we can help our customers in their OpenStack journey, there's 6 unique capabilities that we offer. And the first one is we are agentless. So what that basically means is that you don't have anything running in your application or your VM, right? So no agents to install. And we are multi-tenant, so you can have more than one tenant in one cloud, and we offer secure zones amongst the tenants. So tenant A won't know what tenant B is doing, and the other way around, although they're in the same cloud, okay? Now, we are self-service, so the tenants are able to protect and recover the workloads themselves. So there is no need for a central IT department. We are scalable, so we don't really care how many compute nodes you have. You can have 1 or 1,000. There's no performance degradation on our end. So basically, what we do is we grow as you grow. And excuse me, we are non-disruptive, so we use snapshot technology to capture the data. And we are OpenStack integrated. So we work with all OpenStack integration and versions. Okay? Now I keep saying the word workload, and here is why. I know that a lot of backup solutions out there only capture the data, right? But when Trilio says workload, we not only mean the data, we also mean the metadata, right? So the applications, the operating systems, the VMs, the network configs, the storage volumes, the security groups, right? So at the end of the day, you can see we're not just file systems, we're the whole backup. That's why I keep saying the word workload. Now, because the Trilio leverages the OpenStack native APIs to get its information, we fully support all the major distributions that you can see: Mirantis, Red Hat, SUSE, Canonical, and upstream. And we can store all images on the repositories that you can see on the right. So before I said that we are fully OpenStack integrated, here is why, right? Now I know I spoke about the backup part of Trilio, but I want to take a second and talk about the recovery side as well, because at the end of the day, what good is backup if you cannot recover, right? And for the recovery part, we have 4 recovery capabilities, and the first one is the in-place restore. So you can recover your entire workload into the same cloud, same availability zone. So one-click restore. And the second one is you can recover your entire workload into the same cloud, but a different availability zone or region. And here some customers leverage this for test and development, or to migrate workloads between availability zones. The third one is you can recover the entire workload into a net new cloud, or do simple file and folder recovery. So let's say you don't want to recover the full workload, right? So the tenant can go search through the workload and do simple file and folder recovery. So we can get that granular. And during the demo, Robert's going to show you how that looks like in the solution. Okay. Now, before when I was talking about the 6 unique capabilities of Trilio, I mentioned that we are non-disruptive. And here is why. Here is how we get the data into the Trilio solution. Okay. First, we take a snapshot of the entire workload, so a full one, an incremental forever capture. And because we leverage snapshot technology, we're non-invasive, right? After that, we store it into a QCOW2 format and only store the changed blocks going forward. So as a result, as you can see, they're fully formed and mountable. So guys, as you can see, pretty straightforward and simple. It's a lightweight solution, okay? Now here are a couple of logos that we have with our customers. I just want to point out that we're not only focusing on large organizations or small ones. We have a variety of different customers and a variety of different verticals, big or small. We do work with a lot of service providers out there that offer backup as a service to their customers. So yeah, not only in one or another vertical. So that's pretty much in a high level of Trilio, of who we are and what we do. I'm not going to get into pricing since I believe it's not going to be relevant and important for you guys right now. But yeah, we're definitely looking forward to the next to the rest of the presentation and of course to your questions. Okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
Perfect. Then I'll stop here. I will hand it over to Robert for the technical deep dive and the architecture.
Just to ask if there is any question until now. It was pretty clear. Okay.
So I just have one question related to the restore possibility from one cloud to another. What type of use cases did you try to test? Like I don't know, if you want to restore your workload from Red Hat to Canonical, you are fully certified on this?
Yes, we are, and Robert is gonna go deeper in a moment in that. But yes, as mentioned, we do support all the distributions, including upstream, and yes, you can migrate from one to the other.
Okay, so yeah.
As well for, let's say, if I would like to install a new cloud with a new release. So now I have Queens and I want to install Rocky, for example. Can I make a backup of Queens and then restore in Rocky?
Right now, we are working on certifying Rocky. Okay, there you go.
So first of all, hi everyone, Robert Rother here, Solution Architect from Trilio for EMEA. So let me change the question a little bit. Let it make it, can I migrate from Red Hat OSP 10 Newton to Red Hat OSP 13 Queens? The answer is yes. Can I currently migrate from Red Hat OSP 13 to Red Hat OSP 14, which would be working? The answer is no. Reason for that, Trilio does not yet support Rocky. Will be coming though. So generally, also migration between OpenStack versions is possible.
Can I ask something? May I ask something? I understand you used storage from Amazon and another provider of storage. How expensive it is?
How you pay for your storage, I don't care. I give you a backup solution that works for it.
I think he asked about the cost of it, but I think the presentation was about the API about. Am I right?
Well, sorry if I came off a little bit too jokey here. So then you get the question again more serious. So Trilio can leverage Amazon Web Services and Ceph as the backup target. So that means this is the target where we write our backup data to. We are not providing the backup storage. We are providing a software solution that is capable of doing an instance backup of OpenStack, which is then written to the backup target of your choice.
It's pretty clear for that. Thanks. Any other question?
Okay.
So far, all the questions were done, so please go on with your presentation.
All right. Okay, so some of the things I will tell you we already answered currently, but let me still go through it like normal. And if there are any new questions, please keep on hold to them until the presentation is finished so that we can answer them before we go into the live demo. So first thing, Simina already told you pretty much already why legacy solutions are not cut for OpenStack. You have the agents you have to maintain and to manage, and as the OpenStack administrator is no longer the owner of the instance, it doesn't have the capability to tell the customer, We have a maintenance window from 1 to 2 p.m. on Friday evening, because he doesn't know if what the tenant is doing, what he has there. So this is one thing. Then we also have the scalability. As all legacy solutions, they have a scale limit of virtual machines or hosts they can protect. But Trilio can scale like the OpenStack thing. Next thing is the multi-tenancy. So you see those elements back up, and when you put them together and then think generally about what is the kind of data protection solution you're looking for, you will come up with, I need a data protection project that provides, as all other OpenStack projects, a self-service to the tenant. It also should not interfere with the OpenStack implementation that I have. Again, this is how every OpenStack project works. They are not interfering with each other. Each project has its sole purpose. And Trilio did exactly that with Trilio, providing self-service enterprise data protection to the tenants in OpenStack. But what will change when you have your OpenStack environment? Doesn't matter if you're going upstream or with an enterprise distribution, you always have your controllers, you always have your compute nodes, you always have your Cinder storage. And when you add Trilio to that, you will have the following components which will get added to your OpenStack environment. The first one being a new controller, the Trilio virtual machine, our head and brain, which will get deployed on a KVM server as it is delivered to you as in QCAD2. Where you can deploy the Trilio virtual machine is pretty much up to you. The only requirement from the Trilio side is it has to be outside of the compute node. So it is not allowed to run the Trilio virtual machine as an instance inside the OpenStack. The two main reasons for that are networking, which can be solved, I know, since the Trilio virtual machine needs to connect directly to your backup target, to your compute nodes, to your controller nodes. But the security side of that is more important. Since if you would run the Trilio virtual machine inside a tenant, you would basically allow a virtual machine to speak directly to the heart of its hypervisor, and no security team in the world will allow that. The next component is our Trilio API, which will get installed on a controller node so that we have the native integration between OpenStack and Trilio. And then we integrate the service, the Trilio data mover, which gets deployed on the compute nodes. The Trilio data mover is a really, really lightweight Python script which runs as a normal operating system service on your compute nodes. And as the name already says it, the sole purpose of the Trilio data mover is to move the actual data of the virtual machines. The data transport is then happening via Ethernet, so we are providing you with backup to disk over Ethernet, which can connect to any storage that provides the NFS protocol, or we already talked about it for S3, Amazon Web Services, or SaaS clusters. In terms of who writes what, the Trilio virtual machine does write and gather the metadata about the protected virtual machines, while the data mover, as said, adds the actual data of the virtual machine. So let's talk a little bit about how and what is Trilio actually doing. The first thing is, as said, Trilio knows that an OpenStack instance is much more than just its data. Defining an instance inside OpenStack takes information from multiple projects, and each of these informations are needed to restore the exact same VM as we backed up. And this is why Trilio integrates into the 5 core projects of OpenStack. We integrate into Keystone together the user ID, the project ID, and the service user ID to identify the cloud to provide the full multi-tenancy for each backup. In addition, we grab from Neutron everything about the network. So we start from the virtual machine that you want to protect, grab all the ports that is connected to this virtual machine, grab from the ports the security groups, IP addresses, MAC addresses, go from those ports to the networks, grab everything about the network and subnetworks, and then grab the router which is connected to this network or subnetwork that we already grabbed. At this point, we do start with the network, so we don't grab the connection to the external network if there is any existing. Reason for that is that there is also the use case that maybe the instance is infected by a malware and you want to restore it in a safe environment without getting it directly connected to the outside world. From Nova, do we grab the availability zone, the flavor, and any metadata that is attached to the virtual machine itself. From Cinder, the volume configurations and the volume types. From Glance, everything about the virtual machine image, including the virtual machine image itself. And the incremental data capture is happening via the Cinder snapshot API. Which brings us to a dry run or full backup. So on the left side, you see typical customer installations and typical OpenStack installations that you find around the world. Controllers, compute, and the self-storage cluster behind it. You will get here that I will tell you that we are using special set APIs. What does it have up here? It doesn't matter which storage you're using behind Cinder. We are always capable of providing the functionalities for the Cinder storage as long as the Cinder driver does fully support the storage you have attached to it. So the first thing that Trilio is doing is we send out the QEMU freeze command to the QEMU hypervisor, which is then routed inside the virtual machine to the QEMU guest agent. And when the QEMU guest agent receives the command, he will run the FS3 hook script and do whatever is written inside this FS3 hook script. So let me stay here for a second. Sorry. As the first question that you will probably ask yourself is, I just told you Trilio is agent, yes, and now I'm talking about an agent inside the virtual machine. The QEMU guest agent is not part of Trilio. It is an agent comparable to the VMware tools, which extends the capabilities of your chosen hypervisor, and Trilio is leveraging those capabilities. The second thing here is that the FS3 source script allows you to create an application-consistent backup for every single application on the market that is currently on the market or will be in the future. As this, you can create your very own FS3 source script, which will then do whatever is necessary to do to get your application into a consistent state. After the command has been worked by the QEMU guest agent, we take the snapshot via the Cinder Snap API, and this snapshot is per definition crash consistent. So even if you don't have a QEMU guest agent installed or no FS3 source script in place, you will always have a crash consistent backup. After the snapshot has been taken, we already sent out the form, since we have all the data that we need now in the Cinder storage. So as you see, the time frame in which a virtual machine might get affected by Trilio is as small as it can get. No snapshot technology-based legacy solution is capable of providing a smaller window. After the fall, we calculate the blocks from the snapshot via the SEF API. For any other storages, we go block by block through the snapshot, create new volumes out of those snapshots, out of those blocks, present those volumes to a compute node where they are read by the Trilio data mover, converted into QCAR2, and written to the backup target. process is a streaming process. So there's no caching on the compute nodes. And since we are using the QEMU image convert for that, there's also no high CPU or memory usage. Typical numbers that we see in our labs for 2 GB backup is around 20 megabytes of RAM, which doesn't change no matter how big the backup gets, and around 1 to 2 minutes of CPU time, which is again barely nothing. And it does scale pretty well, so when I go to a more reasonable backup size like 200 gigabytes, we are talking about 8 to 10 minutes of CPU time that we measured in our labs. Once the backup has been written, we clean up by deleting the snapshot volumes, and we keep the actual Cinder snapshot that we just created as a reference point for future incremental backups. So for incremental, we start exactly the same, freeze, snap, fall, and then we calculate the block difference utilizing the setdiff API. Again, when there's no sets behind Cinder, we go block by block through both snapshots to calculate the true incremental block change between those snapshots. Out of those change blocks, we create new volumes, which are again presented to the data mover, read, converted, and written to the backup target, where they also get a backing file. This backing file is always connecting the newest backup to the last backup that has been created. So you will get a backing file chain down to the last full backup, which makes every single incremental backup that Trilio creates a full synthetic backup, providing you with the small footprint and the speed of incremental backup while keeping the full capabilities of a full backup. After the backup has been written, we again clean up, delete the snapshot volumes, and delete the oldest snapshot, again keeping the newest one for the next incremental backup. So let's now talk about the use cases that Trilio can provide you. Simina already gave you a heads up on those, but I would think I can give you a few more details about it. So the first thing, our core competency is of course backup and recovery, which allows you to do a local virtual machine recovery, and you can recover a subset of the virtual machines that are part of your backup. You can recover the files and folders inside each snapshot, also divided into the disks and virtual machines that are part of the backup. Or you can recover the complete backup to get your complete tenant back. Trilio will not generate a complete new tenant for you, but it will fill the tenant with the data from the backup. But for most of our customers, and since the two questions that we already had read in that direction, it's more interesting how Trilio allows you to migrate. As the backup that you create from one tenant in one cloud with Trilio is not fixed to that cloud, or that tenant, or even the Trilio installation. As long as the backup data exists, the administrator is always able, so this is a task that is not self-service, this requires administrator involvement, to reassign the ownership of a workload to a different tenant in the same cloud, or a different tenant in a different cloud. Of course, the backups can also be moved between availability zones or regions. Or, we had this question, you can migrate between OpenStack versions. So as the question was suggesting, you can use Trilio as a safety net for the case that your role upgrade is failing, or if you have two clouds available at the same time, to migrate your workloads easily from the old OpenStack version to the new one. Or you can migrate between OpenStack distributions. So as long as your backup is coming from unsupported OpenStack and is going to unsupported OpenStack, and the backup is created with Trilio and the Trilio is used for the restore, you can always recover and migrate your workloads with Trilio, which does of course allow you to do a simple and easy disaster recovery. As when you have your two OpenStack clouds, each has Trilio installed, each Trilio cloud and installation has its own backup target. You can back up the data in OpenStack Cloud 1, then migrate, move, mirror the data to OpenStack Cloud 2, so the target of OpenStack Cloud 2, and then import it into the Trilio installation on your DR side, and then easy recover it into your OpenStack Cloud 2. Trilio in this process is just one tool that you're using, and I would like to point out that we are not a business continuity solution. So Trilio can create your backups, and Trilio can import and recover your backups. How you move the data and make it available at your DR site is totally up to you. And of course the storage technology that you have available. So coming to the end of the architecture presentation, let's talk about support. The support matrix I'm about to show here is just a pretty easy one. We have a more complex which we do check against when we truly engage with customers. But in general, as long as you're running Red Hat, SUSE, and Mirantis Canonical, or upstream, and with upstream I mean the vanilla upstream, Ansible, OpenStack, or Cola, you are good to go between the versions Kilo and Queens. I already heard the question about, are we fully certified? So we are full certified partners of Red Hat, Canonical, Mirantis, and SUSE, but we only did run through the complete certification process for their long-term release. Meaning for Red Hat OSP 10 and Red Hat OSP 13. For Canonical, the same Red Canonical Newton and Canonical Queens. Mirantis, MCP 1.1, which is either Okata or Pi. And SUSE is currently fully qualified against SUSE 7. Upstream is always supported in all versions. In terms of file repository, we support anything that provides the NFS protocol, be it v3 or v4. And the S3 protocol is currently qualified against all set versions, so please ignore the red hat here, or Amazon Web Services. Additional S3 targets are currently under qualification. Targets that are under qualification are Netted Storage Kit, Cloudian, Zedera, Scalpy, something from EMC that I don't remember at the moment. So as you see, we are gradually increasing our S3 targets according to our customer needs. You might ask, why don't we support all S3 targets like we do for NFS? The reason for that is that we do have faith in our S3 gateway, but we sadly had to find out that not all storage vendors did implement the S3 protocol the exact same way or completely. This is why we have to qualify them first. And lastly, I told you that we are leveraging the Qemu guest agent's capabilities to run FS3 soap scripts. And Trilio did create FS3 soap scripts for the 7 databases that you see here. Those scripts are starting points, so they are not leveraging special technologies of those databases. They will start the database, dump the memory onto disk, and after the snapshot has been taken, it will start the database again. But as I said, those are just starting points so that you can see and learn how an FS3 soap script looks like to generate your very own according to your needs. And with that, I thank you for your patience and listening to me. And I'm open to questions if you have any.
So, if you have any question until now?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you support the backup of all the core components of OpenStack, like busing, the neutron, etc. What is the case like if a customer wants an extra component? For example, I'm working on a customer that has Octavia for load balancing, and let's say that the customer has SSL offloading for the load balancing, so they keep their certificates in another component called Barbican. Do you support, or it's in your future release cycle, support for these extra components?
Trilio is planning to increase its support the OpenStack project according to what our customers. We are still a pretty small company with, we're actually closer, smaller than 50, and more than half of us are developers or Q&A. But we have a strong list of feature requests, and we increase Trilio's capabilities according to the feature requests of our customers. We do see other use cases, like for example the one that you just mentioned, but we haven't got that request often enough yet to put it into the early roadmap. So it is in the roadmap in general, but not in the near future.
One question. If we have a customer who wants to have these new features in, your team of developers can handle it, of course, with an adequate cost for that.
With the adequate cost and time, our development team can most likely handle it.
Okay.
The reason why I say most likely is I'm not part of those developers, so till now they haven't found anything that really blocks them to move forward. But as you know, with everything in IT, there's still a small chance that they might say, sorry, we can't do it.
Okay, good to know. Thanks. Any other question, guys? Ladies? Sorry.
So can you be more clear? So you about the backup plan, about the policies, the backup policies. You have one full backup, and after that a number of differential backups, or how many? How someone can customize the policy, the backup policy?
I would ask you to wait for the demo. If the question is still existing after the demo, I will gladly take it up again. I will show you during the demo how the retention policy and the full backup and so on can be adjusted.
And another, maybe, I'm not sure, but I want to ask this. What is the difference, time difference between freeze and solve?
Totally depending on your FS3 SOAK script. So if you have an FS3 SOAK script that runs within 2 milliseconds, then the time difference is maybe 5 milliseconds. If you have an FS3 SOAK script that runs 2 minutes, then of course the time difference is 2 minutes. So from Trilio perspective, we do send out the freeze API command to the Qimo hypervisor, and then wait until the Qimo hypervisor sends the response back that the Qimo guest agent is done, or the response, there's no Qimo guest agent installed. So the worst case scenario you can have here is that the Qimo guest agent socket is existing in the virtual machine, meaning the Qimo hypervisor can send the signal, but the Qimo guest agent is not installed or not running inside the virtual machine. Then you have a 5-minute delay before the Qimo hypervisor finally decides to stop the send freezing, the send the freeze command. Then the snapshot will be taken, and then you have another 5-minute delay before the fall will be taken. But since your question is regarding the freeze of the virtual machine, during that phase, of course, the virtual machine is not freeze.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you something. Did I understand correctly? You do backups of whole tenant? Maybe I didn't get it right.
as long as we are talking about the 5 core project metadata, yes, we do back up everything that is inside the tenant according to what is set up. So you will see during the demo that you don't have one workload for the complete tenant. You can create a workload according to your needs. So you can back up the complete tenant, but you don't have to.
You're still backupping what, the metadata, the tenant, or?
The tenant itself, so if we're talking about the shell, the project ID and who users are attached to the tenant with which role, those informations we do not back up.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Another question related to the scalability of the solution. So let's say that I want to scale my cloud with the controller and compute. In the controller plane, you have the VM that you advise to put on the controller plane, and on the compute you have those Python scripts that do the backup parsing. How do you actually are able to scale if the administrator wants from, let's say, the controller or compute node to be to add an extra?
So,
exactly this.
reasonable question. So, Trilio is designed for a scale-out architecture. I'm not sure if you can see it, but when you look at the Trilio virtual machine on a KVM server, you will see that there are small white boxes behind the green one, which should indicate that when your 12-watt virtual machine controller is reaching its limits, you start the second one. When then those two reach their limits, you start the third one. So you scale out according to your general needs at the 12-watt virtual machine side. The 12-watt API is like any API, just a router. So you have to install as many 12-watt APIs as you have controllers, since you will have an HA proxy or something that defines which controller is your active one, which leaves the compute nodes. Each data mover is responsible for the virtual machines running on the compute node he is installed on. So when you increase the compute nodes, you simply install more data movers on those compute nodes. So this means that you can scale Trilio in the same amount as your cloud scales. And the more your cloud scales, the better your performance might get. Since each Trilio data mover is only responsible for the virtual machines running on the compute node he's installed on, when your virtual machines are spread over many compute nodes, many data movers can work in parallel at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my last question. If I understand correctly, can you please confirm this is an offline backup? You mentioned some database servers, and you explained at the end of the presentation how you acquire the consistency by shutting down the server and then making the backup and starting up the server. Is it right? Is it an offline backup?
No, it's not an offline backup, it's an online backup. So let's define what I mean with freeze and fall. The Colimo guest agent is running inside your virtual machine while the virtual machine is active. And he's calling a script when he receives the freeze command. And let's say you have in your script written, create a checkpoint for the Oracle database. Then the script will do exactly that and just that. So your virtual machine is still running. When you use the checkpoint technology of Oracle, your database is still running. Then we take the snapshot, and thanks to the snapshot, we know there is a consistent state at which we can resume. And then we send the for command to the guest agent, which runs the script in a different path. And whatever you have written there, with the example that I've just given with the Oracle checkpoint, your for would be empty, since there's nothing to tell the database to resume its work. So it doesn't mean that we stop the virtual machine, except you want it to stop. It's totally up to you what happens during the freeze and thaw.
But what was I didn't follow. What was the idea about? It was something at the end of the presentation. We stopped the. I didn't.
The way how you do the snapshots for each database in order to assure consistency.
So this is actually the first way how database consistency was always achieved, is that the database itself, so not the virtual machine got stopped, the database itself got stopped. So when a database gets stopped, it writes everything that it has in its transaction log onto the disk into the database itself and doesn't receive any new transactions.
For me, this is an
This
offline
means once
backup.
everything is
Sorry.
written and all SQL commands are done, you have a consistent state of the database.
Yeah, this is what I
And this is
mean.
the state
for
where you can know
offline
when the system gets restored and boots up again, the database will work again. And this is the way how our created Trilio scripts are doing it. We stop the database, wait until everything is written to disk, and then take a snapshot, and after the snapshot has been taken, we tell the database to resume its operations. Most databases today, though, do offer capabilities to set and consistent state without stopping the database access. So it can still receive transactions as SQL commands, it can still work while a snapshot is taken, but when you restart the virtual machine from the restore, it will continue on the checkpoint that has been set. A lot of other databases, MySQL, such an example, are able to survive crash consistency. So when you recover a crash consistent backup, crash consistency means that your virtual machine itself will always boot. And crash consistent applications like MySQL guarantee you that your MySQL database will also start and will not be corrupt. This is what I mean.
Okay, yeah, I understand now. This is, well, from my experience, this is an offline backup. Online backup meaning...
It's not.
No, online backup means that you do not stop the database server.
But you don't stop the database server.
He said he stopped the database server.
You don't stop the database. You put it in a backup mode, and in that time, it saves the transactions log in somewhere else besides the database. So in that time, the database can be consistently backed up. And after the consistent backup, then the transaction logs of the application, for example, that try to insert stuff in the database are not inserted in the database, they are inserted in these transaction logs, and after the backup, the database online backup is done, then the transaction logs are moved to the database. The problem is that during this time frame, there is nothing written in the database, but in another place. But you don't stop the database, it's cached somewhere. But you don't shut it down.
Okay, you do not say
So no data loss.
No data loss, but I think from an application point of view, you could lose some, I don't know, it's a little bit disrupted, but this is not, I don't think it's a problem with the Trilio application, it's a database problem.
Yeah, it's
For
not
each,
from the
application.
from the backup policy. It's from the database approach. Okay. Any other question, guys? So Robert, you can thank you for the presentation. You can start the demo if you, because there are no longer other questions.
Okay, then let's go into the demo. So what I have here is an upstream clean OpenStack, and I ask you to not get confused that I'm currently logged in as admin in the admin project. This is solely so that I can show you everything without switching users or tenants. But the first area we will be looking at is the project area. And as you all know, the project area is the self-service area of each tenant. So inside here, we have a tab called Backups, which you won't find without Trilio. Inside Backups, you get access to your workload. So this is where the integration of Trilio comes in, so that tenants can manage and create their own workloads. A workload creation is pretty simple. They don't need to know what they have to do. They don't need to know how the backup solution works. They don't need special knowledge. All they need to know is what do they want to back up, how often do they want to back it up, when shall it be deleted again, and do they want full backups from time to time or not. So you provide a workload with a name, define the type where you decide will the snapshots be taken one after another, so serial, or all at the same time in parallel, and then you can directly move on to which virtual machines do you want to protect. Provide them with a schedule, so a start date, an end date, and an RPO. And the reason why I can't change this RPO currently, we will come to later. The retention type policy, so you can choose between the number of snapshots you want to keep or the number of days you want to keep each snapshot. And you can then define the full backup interval. So you can choose between incremental forever, full backup forever, or a full backup every X snapshot. So this way, the tenant has full control about this retention. And just in case that you have an application that is so highly sensitive that you don't get it consistent via the Coimo get agent FS3 subscript, and also crash consistency is not enough, you can decide to pause the virtual machine during the backup process. This is then really an offline backup. Otherwise, all backups are taken while the virtual machine is active and running. Once a workload has been created, the tenant can, of course, create manual snapshots, and he gets full access to his workload. Inside the workload, he will see which virtual machines are currently protected, as a workload can, of course, be changed over time, so you can add instances or remove instances to it. And you can see the current policy, where you see how the snapshot schedule is configured, and in case that the schedule is enabled, you will see when the next get snapshot is scheduled, and you see the retention policy for the snapshot. And of course, they get full access to all snapshots available. Inside those snapshots, they will see which virtual machines are truly part of the snapshot, what was the original name, the security groups attached to it, the flavor that it was used, the networks that were attached, including the IP, which volumes were attached to it, and the original ID of it. So combined with the time and date when the backup was taken, this should be all necessary metadata information that a tenant needs to identify which snapshot does he want to restore. And in terms of restore, do we provide 4 possibilities. The first one is the one-click restore. As you see, it doesn't ask any questions. You can directly click restore again, and it will then restore the complete backup in the same state as it was while the backup was taken. Meaning if you choose the same availability zones, the same IP addresses, the same network, everything will be the same. The one-click restore has a requirement, though, to be capable to pull that off. And this requirement is that we are restoring into the same tenant that did the backup, and that the original network we are restoring to still exists. For all other restore options that include the complete virtual machines, we have the selective restore. The selective restore, as the name gives it away, allows you really to select and choose which backups, which machines you want to restore how. So you decide for the network action, do you want to map the backup network to any network that is existing? By default, we will choose the same network that we back up if it is existing. Or do you want to restore the complete network topology that we backed up? In this case, we will then create the network, the routers, and everything. As you see in the warning, we do warn customers, though, that they should make sure that the networks that we restore are no longer existing in the tenant. Neutron itself won't really care. It will simply create a new network with the same subnetwork, we'll connect a router to it. On the IT side, everything is fine. The problem, though, is that when multiple networks in the same tenant with the same subnet exist, you will most likely have a lot of network issues to fix afterwards. You then define the volume types that you want to use for the Cinder volumes. Again, we will use the same volume type by default that got backed up. And for each instance, you decide, is it part of the restore? What shall be the name, the flavor, the availability zone, the Cinder availability zone, and how do you want to deal with the IP address? So you can decide to either choose the next available IP address in the network that you created, or use a predefined neutron port, so that you can control which IP address the instance will have if you don't restore the complete network topology and instead decided for a network mapping. All the metadata informations here are, of course, the metadata informations that we grabbed during the backup process. The next component is the in-place restore. The in-place restore is designed for those use cases where your original instance is still existing, your original volumes are still existing from an OpenStack resource perspective, but somehow the data in those volumes got corrupt, or you have another reason why you want to vote back on the data in those volumes. And the in-place restore allows you to choose on a per instance, per disk basis, which volume you want to restore. Trilio will then stop the virtual machine and override the chosen volume with the data of this volume from the chosen backup. So we came from restoring everything to a selection to volumes, which leaves us one more granularity level, and this is the restore of files and folders, for which we do provide the capability to mount our snapshots. The mounting is happening against the File Recovery Manager, which is our second appliance that gets uploaded into Glance by the OpenStack administrator, so that each tenant can spin it up inside of tenant when he has the need to do a file and folder recovery. So there's no need to have it run all the time. When it comes to file and folder recovery, though, everyone who was a backup administrator or who is working with backup administrators knows how the users typically come to it. They say, I have a file that was on instance 2, it's something to do with host, but I don't know where, and I'm pretty sure it existed within the last 10 snapshots that you have. Or they say it existed within the last 10 days. And then typically the backup administrator did search through the backups until he did find the file. Luckily, Legacy Backup Solutions did index those files, so the searches did go pretty fast. But now they can do it themselves. So they can hit search, and Trilio is live searching through the backups that got chosen for the given string on the given virtual machine, and give a feedback about each snapshot that contains a hit. And that's why I said Legacy Solution did index. Keep in mind, Trilio has no Trilio agent in the virtual machine. meaning we have no idea about the file system. We have nothing indexed, and we are still capable to provide this feature in a pretty quick amount of time. Once we get the results, we will see for each snapshot when there was a finding, on which disk was there finding, what are the permissions of the files found, the ownership, the size, creation, modification, and access time, and the full path of the file that we identified. So again, from an operating system metadata perspective, all information that the tenant needs to identify the snapshot he wants to restore from. And this file search is working for Linux and Windows file systems as well, without any file system that we are aware of where it doesn't work. We even made it work for macOS. So now let's talk about how can the people actually get their files from the file manager. The first possibility is using HTTP to access the file recovery manager so that their users get a browser-like access to the mounted snapshot where they can dive into the instance, into the disk, and then download the file and folder they're looking for to their client. The second possibility is to leverage that the file recovery manager is a Linux-based virtual machine. So you can use SSH or any SSH-based tool to access it like any other OpenStack instance that you have inside your OpenStack to fetch the files and folders you're looking for. As you see, the files can be changed by the user inside the file recovery manager, but all changes the user do are not written back to the actual backup. So the backup itself is protected, and the data consistency of the backup is guaranteed. And with that, we are at the end of the first part of this demo, the tenant space. So allow me to quickly recap. Trilio allows the tenants to easily create and manage their own workloads, take backups, schedule it on demand, do a file search, and do recoveries from restore everything down to file and folder recovery. So again, from our knowledge and our research of the daily work of a backup administrator in a bigger company, we just gave 50-70% of his daily job to the tenants in an easy consumable manner, so that the administrator can concentrate on the tasks that are really important to him, keeping the service up and improving. And to help the administrator in that, we do have a second tab in the admin area, which is only accessible when you have the admin role, and this is the backup tab, where you find Trilio tab. And here the administrator gets an overview of the information that he needs. So he will see on a glance, is the storage running full, are services down, how many jobs are currently running. And he will get an overview, here I have to make it a little bit smaller, of all the workloads that are existing. So he will see who owns the workload, how many virtual machines are inside the workload, how big is the workload on the storage side, gets a bit of performance meter data, sees if there are failed snapshots, and in case that he sees something is really going wrong, and the next snapshot is too short in time to work with the tenant before the snapshot is due, he can disable the scheduler for a single workload and interfere with the workload and then reach out to the tenant to do whatever he thinks needs to be done to make the workload he just stopped right again. The administrator gets, of course, additional information about the Trilio nodes, installed data movers, storage usage. He gets an audit log. So everything that Trilio is doing will get logged and tracked. so the administrator always knows who was creating a backup, who was doing a restore, and can therefore also help track any misuse of the technology. Of course, we are using a role-based system, so misuse should be pretty hard to do. It's also capable of creating policies. So you have seen during the workload creation process that I was not able to change the RPO, the retention type, or the full backup envelope. This was due that the OpenStack administrator of this lab did assign a policy to the admin project. So all workloads that are created against this policy and that are created now in the admin have to follow this policy. So here the administrator predefines the RPO, the retention type, and the full backup interval, and is therefore controlled what type of workload he will see inside this call. Already existing workloads which get created before the policy gets attached are still running in their old configuration until they get updated. Once they get updated, the policy will get enforced. And the last tab that I would like to show you during the demo is the usage tab. In the usage tab, the user gets an the administrator gets an easy to grasp overview which tenant has how many workloads, is protecting how many virtual machines, and is using how much storage capacity. So from an operating side, this helps them to easily identify, as you can of course also do it in here, who is the owner of workloads that fill up the storage, if there are any. And from a financial side, this gives the information that are typically needed and used to charge the customers of the usage for the backup solution. And with that, I would like to finish the demo. I hope you like what you see. Again, I'm open for questions and any feedback that you might have.
Yes, I would have another question. So from the file manager that you showed us, you can restore a file, actually you can download it to your, let's say, machine workstation. Can you restore it directly to the original VM if it's still running?
No, sadly not, but this is also not a functionality that we want to implement. At least I'm not aware that it's on the roadmap. The idea here is that the tenant is capable of fetching his files and folders when he needs them. And since he can move into the virtual machine via SSH, he can directly use an SSHTP command to move the file and folder to the location where he wants them to.
Next question, thank you. What happens if the metadata changes of a VM? So you initially make a backup of a VM with, let's say, a specific security group, and then you would like to change it. Then the next backup has the updated metadata?
The metadata has changed. Actually, I have expected this question. This is why I prepared something. So you might have seen that there is a snapshot here that is called test. There is a change between the snapshot that was taken before and the test snapshot. And this changes that for instance 2, I added another volume. So here you see in volumes that there are 3 volumes attached to this virtual machine. And when we go back to the snapshot before the test snapshot, you will see that instance 2 has only 2 volumes. So Trilio does always, for each backup, check which storages are connected to the virtual machine, which networks are connected to the virtual machine. So we don't back up the metadata just once. We back up the metadata for each backup process. This is something that we do because it doesn't cost us much. It costs maybe 5 kilobytes of data on disk, and we have an overhead through that of around 1.5 to 2 minutes. So compared to the rest of the process, when we're talking about terabytes of backup data, this is pretty less. So it's not much.
Thank you. Next question.
Welcome.
Do you have an integration plan with the Silometer, for example, for the statistics that you showed us? For the statistic for each workload that you had as
Trilio does not plan to integrate itself into Cilometer or Gnocchi. So as you probably know, Cilometer will be slowly phasing out of the OpenStack world. Instead, it will be replaced by R and Gnocchi. If you want to do that, you can do it yourself if you want to. Since everything that Trilio does and everything that I showed you is fully API-based. So you don't have to use Cilometer if you want to. You can use any other tool that you want and use the Trilio APIs to measure the data that you want to measure. The reason why we don't integrate us directly into Cilometer or Gnocchi is that those projects are, well, Cilometer not anymore, but the Gnocchi project, for example, is changing so quickly that even if we would integrate us into Gnocchi, it's most likely that we won't be able to keep up without fully integrating our team into the Gnocchi community.
Thank you very much. No more questions, and thank you for being so patient with my questions.
You're welcome. So ask away. I'm here to answer your questions.
How do you detect the database server type inside the VM?
We don't detect them. From a Trilio perspective, a virtual machine is a virtual machine. So we do back up this virtual machine, and we're coming back to the QEMU guest agent in the discussion we had before. If the snapshot of the virtual machine that will be taken is consistent or not is totally depending on the FS3 source script your QEMU guest agent is running before the snapshot is taken.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, when you look at Veeam for VMware, Veeam does it the exact same way.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the presentation. Can you have incremental snapshots as well? You can. Now, can you also have programmable snapshots from within the app?
You mean scheduled snapshots?
No, not
You
scheduled.
mean that you have full snapshots every X incremental?
No, I'm thinking more of, say, you know, on an exception being raised, can I have a snapshot taken there and then of the machine? So from within the software. Or have triggers in Trilio. Ad hoc.
Okay, try to give me a complete example of what you're trying to do, then I can tell you if we are able to achieve it or not.
So, as I said, the program raises an exception, right? And part of that exception treatment, I want to take a snapshot of there and then of the machine. So I can send it to support.
Okay.
It's agentless.
That's a feature that we do not provide out of the box. But here again, I will point out that everything we do is API based. So if I want to do that, what you just said, I would set up a monitoring solution which tracks the errors of the virtual machine. And when a specific error is risen, then the API call against Trilio is sent to take a snapshot manually triggered.
Okay, so what you're saying, it is doable from an API.
It is doable.
Any other question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, I've seen you showed in the presentation, so if I understand correctly, you do backups of the full tenant, right? I mean, you create an image of the tenant at some point that you can restore later, of the whole machines at least.
Of everything that is inside the tenant. The reason why I'm a little bit differentiating here, a lot of our customers were interpreting this in a way that they could, and for disaster recovery, restore an empty OpenStack, so it's just an OpenStack that provides for services without any users or tenants, and then they expect the Trilio to restore the complete environment that was running on top of this OpenStack.
Okay.
Trilio is capable of restoring everything that is inside the tenant.
Okay, you could do this restore in another tenant, right?
Correct.
And you showed.
Actually, if you want to see it, I also prepared that. So let me see if I have a worker that I can migrate. So what workloads do I have at the moment that I don't care about? So, yeah, let's take this one. ETS migration, that one's good. Good, so I then need IDs. Good, so first, can you see this, the command line well enough, or should I increase it more?
It's okay.
Okay, good. So we do have, of course, an API as well, a CLI, where you can run everything that I showed you via CLI minus all. So I said I wanted this one. Good. So workload manager, workload minus reassign workloads. So just to make sure that I have the right command, yeah. So this one takes first new tenant ID. So the reason why I'm doing this via CLI is the migration of workloads is only provided via API or CLI. As this is a truly administrative feature, which we don't want to provide via Horizon, as it might be accessible by normal users by accident if the OpenStack role is not set correctly. Good, so where's my admin tenant? There. Next is the workload ID. Minus workload IDs. So now the workload ID. I did have here, and I wanted to use this one. App minus user ID. And here I want to use my admin as well. And that's it. So we got the feedback that the workload has been migrated, and when I now go back into the Horizon, take a look at the existing workloads, I will find my just removed workload right here and can restore it if I want to. So since we're already talking about the reassign command, I would like to show you, since in case of disaster recovery scenario, you won't have the time or the patience to run this command that I just typed for every single workload that you have. That might be hundreds or thousands of them. And this is why we do provide you with the capability to prepare those. So you can use a mapping file. An example of this mapping file is always provided with the Trilio virtual machine. In this mapping file, you can predefine that everything that is coming from a specific old tenant ID will get migrated to a new tenant ID, or you can migrate and combine based on the workload IDs. So this way you can prepare your disaster recovery, and when you have the use case, simply adjust the mapping file and run the reassign command. Any other questions?
Just explain to me a bit with this reassign command. What did you do exactly?
This reassign command, I provided this with two informations that are actually free. I told him the new tenant ID the workload will be assigned to, so that the workload is available to the new tenant. I gave it the workload ID of the workload that I want to move to the new tenant. And I gave it a new user ID so that it has a clear ownership. So every workload has a clear ownership with a project user ID combination. We have an additional ID that we use. This is the Trilio service user ID to identify the cloud. So if I want to migrate between clouds, I have to set one more parameter, which is this one, the minus migrate cloud true or false, so that I would be able to migrate between clouds. What the reassign process is then doing, it's actually reading not the database of the Trilio, since we can't be sure that the workload that we want to assign is already inside the Trilio database. We are reading through the backup storage until we find the workload that you want to move, and then assign the workload to the new tenant, changing the metadata files of the workload itself and including it into the database of the Trilio.
So reassigning this workload to another tenant, that means replicating the existing tenant, or what?
We don't replicate it. This workload is no longer available for the tenant where I took it from. What you can do, though, is when I take a look at the Trilio, mounts. You see all those workload directories. Each directory is representing one workload. You can copy the complete workload directory to a different storage where another Trilio is reading it, and then import it from there using the reassign command. So everything that you have to keep truly safe to be always able to restore is this workload directory. It contains all information that you ever need to restore a Trilio backup.
Where are these folders kept? Can you?
They are kept in a directory which is var Trilio mounts. So let me show you the df-h because this is an NFS mount that we have here.
Okay.
So we are mounting to var Trilio mounts, and then according to the NFS path that we get, we create a hash file so that each NFS mount gets its unique mounting point inside the operating system. And then we map the NFS share to the mount point.
Okay.
And I'm interested how many people will be running against my firewall in the next days. So when you upload this video, please unclip this part.
We have an option to replicate when restoring the object IDs. So, for instance, you have the virtual machine ID initially, then you remove the virtual machine and you like to restore. Could you restore it with the same IDs? And same security groups and no metadata IDs?
we do restore all security groups, and we do restore all security group relations, but we are not able to keep the IDs of an instance. Reason for that is how OpenStack itself works. So most people who took a look into the database of OpenStack are pretty surprised how badly written it actually is. It's not that the IDs of an instance that got deleted will get deleted out of the database itself. The ID and everything that is connected to this ID will get a deleted flag, so that when this ID is grabbed, it was shown as not existing. But when you would now create a new instance using the same ID, the instance creation would fail as this ID is already existing inside the database.
Even though the instance is deleted, but it still exists in DB. Flagged as deleted.
You mean when it is part of the security group, so when you use the instance inside the security groups?
No, nothing. Okay, I understand. Thank you. No, I was just trying to complete what you were saying. I understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can you get back to the web interface?
Sure.
So from what I've seen, you've integrated your product with the OpenStack interface, web interface. The workloads tab,
Correct.
it's like a plugin or something.
Yes, it's a Horizon server plugin which we do install together with our API on your OpenStack controllers. When you have a containerized environment, we do install the Horizon plugin, of course, in the Horizon container, while the Trilio API gets its very own container.
Okay. Thanks.
What?
So you can run as well the Trio Vault VMs as containers?
The Trilio VM itself not. The Trilio VM is currently a full-fledged virtual machine. We have plans to change that, but we don't have a fixed timer for that, as we are still investigating which approach would be the best one. If we decide to go for packages or if we containerize the TVM, that's still to be decided. But for now, it's a full-fledged virtual machine and will stay that way for the near future.
Any other question? Okay. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Simina. Pizza arrived, so we have to take it as it hot. So thank you very much for the nice presentation. I have to tell you that's a nice surprise for me. It's the first presentation remote, which has no interruption, which is good.
There you go.
Which is good.
And I was thinking about
Yeah. Thank you very much, and bye. See you. See you.
Thank you.
See you. Thanks.